Welcome, everybody. I'm feeling so good tonight, literally. I want to welcome you guys to Black Love When We Met. I'm your host, Trey Holiday, and I get to kick off this pilot with the goods. I got Sean and Kimberly in the building. Thank you guys for joining me.
No problem.
That's a problem. No problem. Really? No. Thank you for having us, Trey. This is a gift to me, like more than anything else. I know this is like excruciatingly painful for my wife.
It's not painful. It's not my thing, but I do enjoy talking about him.
Yeah, see, there we and that's really what this is about. I mean, for me, I get so inspired by Black couples, and my parents have been together for 35 years, right? And there's a part of me that really is so centered and has been growing up, seeing their love blossom. And, for me, it's also important that we really put these stories out there. This is what Black media for me is about. It's about really showcasing how we have that resilience. And I think Black love is one of the strongest things. So we're going to just kick it off here tonight. You guys are the first guests. So thank you for being first and trusting me a little bit here with your story. But I really want to get to the meat of this. I mean, you guys, it's called When We Met, and we're going to start there. So I want to hear a little bit about your backgrounds. Maybe you guys were in college and bumped into each other. Maybe you were out there DJing, Sean. I don't know, right? But tell us you guys' backstory. I'll start with you, Kimberly. Like, what were you doing before you met this guy?
We have two different stories about how we met. They converge, but they're still different. I was working here. I'm from Jersey, and I moved here in 2006. And I was working at a nonprofit and trying to find Black community here in Seattle is very different from Jersey. And I found community through church. And so I was at a Bible study for 20-somethings that was hosted at his house, but his roommate was hosting. So he wasn't going to Bible study. He was, on the night that I was at his house,
Here we go.
He was going out to party, and then just happened to be captivated.
Revisionist history.
Happened to be captivated by this woman in a green sweater who was me, and decided to change course.
Well, you know what? I'm not mad at her version, Sean. I mean, what's your counter narrative here, brother?
See, what happened was, I absolutely. So we were hosting a Bible study at the house I was staying at, but
you notice he said we.
Yeah. I was not we, but we by proxy. In fact, I lived there. Okay, it wasn't my Bible study. Yeah. I was actually on my way to go perform with Goode up at the Paragon on a Thursday night. So this is how, like, for a small bit of forever ago. But then I came downstairs and they were having this Bible study conversation, and this is at a point in time in my life where I thought I knew everything about everything. And I was like, oh, well, I could go to this and gig, or I could stay here and debate Bible all night long. And in fact, Doomy was there too, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doomy was there. And Doomy was also at a place where, like, we just go back and forth and debate Bible. And it was just part of, like, what would happen. And so I opted to stay home. And I remember sitting on the steps, I kind of looking down at the room. And there was this incredibly beautiful woman who was sitting at this table who captivated my attention. This is certainly true. But then I asked my friend about her after the fact. And my friend was like, oh, she's a player.
He was full of lies, so he was full of lies.
She said she was a player. So I was like, I'm good. And it was another year or so before we actually started hanging out when she actually stalked me at a Moja Fest.
That's where it's a little bit different.
It sounds like the truth to me. True or false? Did you come to a Moja Fest looking for me?
I was not looking for you. Okay, so we were at the Bible study, and he had invited everyone at Bible study to come to a Moja Fest because he was hosting, like, I don't know, poetry or something.
But what she heard was, I'm inviting you.
No, that's not what I heard. I was not paying any attention to him. But
wait. You were paying any attention to me?
I was paying little attention to him.
Okay. Little.
He was very charismatic, and he knows how to own the room. And I was intrigued to get to know him better.
So, translation, she was paying more than a little attention.
I thought that he would be a good person to have in my corner. And so I ended up going to a Moja Fest, but he wasn't hosting that day. And so a friend of mine invited me to come back the next day, which happened to be the day that he was hosting, and we got into conversation. And
so what I heard was she came on the Saturday and I wasn't there. So she came back again on the Sunday because she wanted to make sure she didn't miss me.
Okay,
yeah. Well, you know what? However these stories manifest, you guys are already giving me a really great start here, literally, because we all have that, right? It's like our perspectives, it's our observation, it's our own perception, right? We're seeing something happen through our eyes. And they talk about this in couples all the time. You're dealing with the very same situation, but it's weighing on you in very different ways. Those nuances are important. And so, okay, so you go to Emoji Fest on that Sunday. He's hosting. What does he finish hosting? Comes down and he's like, "There she is." I mean,
that's how it happened.
Oh, there it is.
I'm just saying that's not how it happened. That's not how it happened.
I love it.
I was with my friends, and he came over to talk to me because we were familiar faces. But that's it. We had not spoken at all. We were familiar faces, and we started to get into conversation. And like I said, I had moved out here a little while ago, but was still trying to find my footing. And we started talking, and he asked me. He was going into like all these deep conversations about, how the Lord was working with him and his mentorship and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then he asked me,
how did the Lord is working, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
I'm just saying it wasn't your typical like, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And so then he asked me, so what do you do? And I felt like he was looking into my soul. He wasn't asking me the typical, what do you do for a living? He was asking me, who are you? And I didn't have a very good answer for it at the time. And I might have started to get a little bit emotional. I wasn't like in deep tears, but I had tears in the side of my eyes. And so after our conversation, I didn't want him to think that anytime someone asked me, how am I doing, I break into crying fits. And so I heard him talk about his MySpace page.
The days of MySpace, I love it.
He wasn't talking to me, but he was talking to a friend about his MySpace page. So I decided I would go onto MySpace and thank him for listening and creating that space. So he knew that it wasn't normal for me to feel that emotional about that question. He says that's me stalking. That was me creating clearing.
Let's be clear, Trey. She slid into my DMs before sliding into the DMs was even a thing.
She found a way to connect with you to explain her own perception, her perspective. And so then you sent him a message apparently on MySpace. How was it for you, Sean, receiving this message after having this kind of deep conversation with Kimberly?
I mean, let's run it back a little bit, okay? Because there's some important nuances here that I think we cannot lose track of. Now, she was with a whole bunch of friends, and her friends were like, "Oh, well, it was a cash-only situation," and her friends were like, "Well, we need to go to an ATM machine." And like, look, Trey, I have no kind of money.
Broke.
Right.
Broke.
I didn't have any kind of money, right? You ever seen me in broke? I have no kind of money, okay?
Right.
I worked perfectly fine, right? I just didn't have the resources at that time to demonstrate how well I was functioning. Okay. But I had $7, right? $7 cash. That's all I had, right? So I gave her homegirl $7. It was like, oh, here, take this. So she could go and get the food she wanted so we could be in that conversation that we had because it meant that much to me. And that is the best $7 that I've ever spent in the entirety of my life because it created the space for this love to really manifest in a transformative way. So I couldn't have been that broke because I was rich with what I needed in that moment.
That's fair. But then when we actually went on a date, I didn't know if it was a date or not after this. It was probably, we made the clearing. I shared my gratitude and, talked about how we should connect sometime. And so he suggested that we go to Joey's. And I didn't know, okay, is this a date? Is this us just talking? I figured if it's a date, he'll pick it up. Well, I had soup. I think he had fries. We definitely split the bill. So I was like, okay, well, I guess this is not a date. I guess it's just my friend.
I mean, like, it's true. It's true. Yeah. And it's absolutely true. She had soup. I had fries, and I could not afford to pay for her soup. That's just how the situation was back then. It is what it is. I should have chose like a drive-through.
Yeah, there
right?
you go.
And then I could have picked it up. We should have said Wendy's. We could have got 2 for $2 and would have been set.
So, I mean, literally that right there is something that I think also helps establish some of the breaking the monotony. right now you have women that if they think it's going to be a date and they have to split that bill, ultimately there's already like, oh yeah, no, see, I can't do it again. I can't hang, go for round two. What was it about you guys' connection and conversation that made you both say, something's here? Maybe I'm feeling a little something right here. Did you guys walk away from Joey's with that kind of information or feeling? I'll start with you, Sean.
I don't think I left Joey's thinking like, oh, this is my wife, right? I left Joey's thinking this is a great time. I really enjoyed myself. But there wasn't anything in that moment where I was like, oh yeah, this is the one, right? That $7 can go a long way, right? Like there was nothing at that moment that had me thinking that this is where we'd end up at.
What about for you?
I still have my questions. I'm gonna keep going because we went out more.
Okay, so I just want to create clearance real quick. So like before we came, I told her she could just tell all the business. And so go ahead and tell all the business. I'm gonna sit here like I'm in the corner. I'm just gonna go and turn this way and mind my own business while I get dusted.
So we had great conversation, and he asked me if we could go out again. This was weeks later. He asked me if we could go out again, and we did. We went to what's this, GameWorks? We went to GameWorks, and we did Dance Dance Revolution. Went to a park, had a great conversation, and now he's in love. Now he's in love. And so then he said, well, let me pick the date next time, because I picked GameWorks, I think. And he said, let's go to Phantom of the Opera. And I'm like, oh, I got a classy day. We're gonna go to Phantom Opera. We go to Phantom of the Opera, and we meet his mom at the will call to pick up the tickets, because she bought our tickets. And I was like, is this a problem?
Do I get credit for being resourceful?
Oh.
You know what I mean? I never in my life have I let the lack of the scarcity stop me from pursuing what I thought was possible.
Possibilities over problems.
It's been this way since jump.
Yeah. Right. Well, we would always talk about the scarcity model. You weren't allowed it to dictate what you were going to do in your next moves.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wanted to take her to Phantom of the Opera. I was gonna figure it out. I used the phone a friend option. Mama,
there you go.
Can you buy these tickets for me?
Yeah.
I may or may not have been too grown to be asking my mother to buy tickets.
He was. But that being said, we're still sitting here, so right. It worked. But I would say the time where it felt like we really were, well, at least for me, that we were creating something. It couldn't have been that much longer after the Phantom date. So we maybe a month in to our relationship, we had, maybe we went to the gym or something, I don't remember, but we went back to my apartment, and we had decided that we weren't going to kiss. We wanted to make sure that that we knew what we were building our relationship on, and that it was pure. And so we came back to my apartment and we sat on the couch, our respective edges of the couch, and this would be the time where you'd look into each other's eyes and get all close, but we weren't doing that. And so we just sat silently for a little bit, and there was some giggles because it's kind of awkward to sit silently with someone that you don't really know very well and just stare at them. And then we kept staring and kept staring, and somewhere in the midst of this staring, this eye gazing, I thought to myself, I think I love this man. But I was like, but that's in the same breath, in the same silent breath, I'm like, but that's crazy because I don't know him that well. This is only a month in. So I kid you not, 45 minutes goes by of not saying a word, of just staring at each other, and it was getting late. So he gets up to leave and says his goodbyes. He leaves my apartment, shuts the door, turns back around and says, by the way, I love you too, and walked off. And I was like, who does this man think he is? But that's how he said I love you, was in silence.
Oh my gosh, you guys, goosebumps. I mean, straight up. I mean, Sean, when you think about that moment and her just telling the story again, I could see it in your eyes that you're going back to that very moment of staring at her, you guys staring at each other. What was going through your head? I mean, it's clear that when there's silence, you're able to hear yourself inside, right?
I mean, it wasn't silent to me; it was loud, right? And I was hearing what she was sharing. It just didn't need words, and I could feel every bit of it. You know, we'll go back to the GameWorks situation because that's really where it hit for me. I mean, at this point in time in my 20s, I thought I was really cool. You know, like I was super cool, right? And it wouldn't, and because I'd spent a lot of time in Seattle nightlife and like in the club promotion scene and all that stuff, and like we would go out regularly and people would see me, and I would go out and people would recognize me, but I was super cool. Like I didn't want to look corny, right? Yeah. But we're out on this date, and at the time, Dance Dance Revolution was in the window of GameWorks, and she had me on Dance Dance Revolution in the window. Right there on this main street, right, where people could walk by. And I was so image conscious at that time of my life. There's no way I would have done anything like this. But I was doing it with her. And I felt just so liberated to be the most authentic version of me. And that's why for me in that moment, I knew, because I was like, look, if I can be unapologetically me like this and not have to worry about like putting up a facade or putting on the cool, I can just be me. Like, I want that. And I want that to be my forever. And so like for me, I knew at that moment, like this was the thing. So when we sat there on the couch and had that conversation that didn't need words, it was loud to me. It was vibrant. It was exciting. It was silent, but there was so much in our presence that was shared that the most natural response was, I love you too, because I heard it loud and clear while we were sitting there with each other. That's exactly what she was saying.
You guys, don't have me tearing up on the first episode. I gotta say that right there is so profound. And I think right now, one of the things that is popping up in my head is you're talking about that being a month in. But at this point, are you guys casually dating? Have you guys decided we're going to be monogamous? Did he ask you, will you be my girlfriend? Check yes or no. I mean, like, right? Is there that moment that happens, or is it just a progression of the relationship?
At that point, there was none of that. At that point, that's why it seemed out of character for me to be thinking, I think I love this man, because we really were just hanging out. We were just talking. But I don't know, maybe 2 months in or so, maybe 2 or 3 months in, he said, I want to court you with the intention of figuring out whether this is for marriage. And I was like, what is courting? I feel like I need to look this up. But it was very much a line in the sand of, I'm not just dating you. My intention is to see if this is eternity. And I appreciated that type of intention with our relationship. And it's been intentional the whole way through.
Yeah, it has to take that step, right, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, Trey, I'm from the Northwest. It doesn't take a whole day to recognize sunshine.
Oh, there we go.
You know, and it was absolutely clear. So yeah, I think like where my faith journey had brought me after years of making the types of decisions that I wasn't really proud of, and not honoring the relationships that I had with women, and not honoring their humanity, right? And being grounded in like seeing them as fully human and not just seeing them as like the objects that like I would objectify them as, and like in my immaturity, I was like I had severed my life from that way of being and was fully committed to embracing like the fullness of the people who were around me. And part of that was honoring my wife as we began to journey together, to be really clear that like I'm not in this to do the thing that I've done historically. Like that old man is passed away, and this new man like doesn't live like that. And the way that I do live is within great intention, and wanted to honor her in everything that we did. And you're right, like that level of intentionality carries forward. Like there's that foundation was set in a way that's so true, that's enabled us to build in a way that's weathered storms, no matter where or how they may come.
Wow.
I will say that when we, for that first year that we weren't talking, but we were in space together for Bible study, because he's commanding the room all the time, he's always talking and I'm always listening. One of the things that he said this Bible study was just bringing up regular challenges that 20-somethings are facing. And I'm sure we were talking about dating. And he said something about how he wanted to make sure that any woman that he was connected to, if that wasn't the person he was supposed to be with, he wanted to make sure that he wasn't getting in the way or damaging them in a way that honors who they were supposed to be with. And so that's why I was intrigued to be in conversation with him, not because I was trying to date him, but just because he was someone who clearly was looking to respect the people he was in, that he was close to. And so when we did start dating, he was like, "You're a daughter of the king. And so I want to make sure that I'm treating you as such." And he has.
He has totally, obviously not just privately, but publicly. And every time that Sean Goode is on this set, he has so many great words of love doting on you. And I know we talked about this before. You're like, oh, it's a little bit embarrassing, but you get to deal with that every single day. And so I love how you guys have really set the tone. We're going to dive more into, how your love blossomed after this break. But I just thank you for setting such a beautiful tone for us on this first episode. Already, I'm so excited to hear more about how this has grown. Yes, absolutely. You guys stay tuned. Right after this short break, we are going to be doing just that, diving into how their love has blossomed over these years. Stay tuned. You're watching Black Love When We Met.
When the pandemic hit, it did affect me. As a barber, I had my own personal reasons why I didn't get vaccinated. At the time, I didn't check the actual source. I thought the vaccine was developed too fast, but I was talking to a doctor and he was telling me more about the vaccine and what it can do to protect us and our family. I wanted to get back to that once was, right? I do feel safe knowing that I am vaccinated. I just hope what I'm saying is reaching into people's heads to know that this is the best decision for all of us.
Hi, this is Robert Battle, Artistic Director of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and we're thrilled to be performing live on stage again. Come see the extraordinary Ailey dancers during my 10th anniversary season and enjoy some wonderful new work, plus returning audience favorites, including Revelation.
Welcome back, everybody, to Black Love When We Met. I get the pleasure of sitting here with the Goodes, Sean and Kimberly. They just gave us a really great foundation as to how they started, and I love that they were able to share their different perspectives. And, guys, now I really want to just dive in, because at the meat of everything, once you establish that and okay, I'm being intentional here with this woman. All right, he's going to be intentional with me. I'm being intentional too. I'm going to meet that with my own energy, right? There comes a time where then it just I feel like this love kind of flourishes. It takes off to a certain degree. And people say sometimes the first couple years are the struggle, but I feel like there's struggles in between. Tell us a little bit about, now you guys have established it. You guys love each other. You know that. Tell us a little bit about how it starts to kind of take off.
It's interesting because people do say the first couple years are a struggle, particularly the first year of marriage. And that was not my experience. I think it's how you struggle, right? And when I think back to that, at least for me, that foundational moment of silence, what's what's in the silence is this space of being seen and being understood and being heard. And when we have arguments, disagreements, because I don't even really feel like we argue, there's always the space of coming back to being seen, being understood, and being heard. And even in times where I don't necessarily feel one of those things, I can feel the desire from him to be seen, understood, and heard. And because that desire is there, and I hope that that desire is felt by him too, then we're having conversations about growth rather than fighting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're really just said a whole word there. And I think a lot of people can really learn from that, because ultimately that's exactly what it's about. And I think so much of the nuance of the heart of arguing is you're not being seen or heard or understood, right? Yeah. Like so it's this constant thing of like, but you don't get it. You don't get what I'm trying to say. You don't get where I'm coming from. Are you listening to me? So much of it is that. So it sounds like you guys' first couple of years really set the tone for where you guys are today. I mean, Sean, tell us about your experience really being like, man, now this is my woman, and I see that intentionality for her to be my forever.
Yeah, I think that for me, it starts a little bit before we were married. We just celebrated 10 years and we celebrated year number 11 this year. And so it's the mountaintop moment for me, which really sets the levels for everything. We had gone on this trip to Mount Rainier with Samuel, and he was so small back then. My now 20-year-old college sophomore of a son, he was what, like 6 at the time, and we had come down from the mountain, and Sam was sleeping, and we were sitting in this downstairs area having this conversation, and in that moment, like I wanted to let her into all the secrets. I wanted to show her all the ugly, because I recognized that like this is the thing, and if this is going to be the thing, like I need to make sure we lead with vulnerability. And I remember talking to her and opening up the closet, exposing all the skeletons, sharing everything that was in there, and handing it to her and saying, like, "Are you sure you still want to go down this path with me, with all these things that you're now holding?" And she said, "I need to think about it." And she left and she went to think about it. And when she came back around and said, "Yeah, let's keep moving forward," for me, that was really the launching moment, because I knew at that point 2 things. Number one, I was never going to do that again. Never, ever, ever going to never going to be that open ever again. And if I can be this open and then have the person see all of what I think is disgusting about me and turn back and look at me and say, "I love you, let's move forward." You don't get that anywhere, right? This world is so judgmental, especially in this age of canceling folks. And you don't just get that anywhere, that type of love. For me, that was the first time I truly experienced God's love. I had fundamentally understood that God loved me. It still felt like I had to prove it to get God's love. Like I had to earn it. Like God loved me because of the way that I was able to quote scripture. God loved me by the way I was able to pray faithfully. God loved me because of my performance. But when I met my wife and we got to this moment and she accepted all of the ugly, in that moment, I really recognized that that's what God's love feels like. In spite of all of what I've done wrong, she still says yes. And to know what that yes felt like and the weight of that yes, I was never going to let go of that yes. And so when she talks about creating the space to be seen and heard, it's reciprocal based upon what I felt like in that moment, to be fully seen and fully heard and invited to be that and bring all of that into our relationship. And so it's an honor to be able to serve my wife in that way. To be able to be married to her every single day is an honor. And it's a privilege that I don't take for granted, because I know what it cost her to say yes to me. And every day I get the privilege of saying yes back.
Well, it says so much. I think the acceptance part of it is just that. And so for you, how was that in your moment when you said, "Okay, I've just received all of this," right? He's literally dumped it in my lap. And now it's on me to decipher how I'm going to move through this. When you took that time for yourself, how was that for you? And clearly it's, it's clear what your end result was, but that process I think is so key to so many of us.
I think at least in that moment, like the connection that we have gave opportunity for me to not just see what's in front of me, but see who God has called him to be. And so who am I to judge what God has called him to be as not enough? And the same can be said for me. I feel like he was regularly looking at me for who I am in divinity, not for what shortcomings I had. And so if we can constantly stand in who we are through divine love, then we can offer each other that same divine love on an everyday basis. So for me, yes, there's space to pause, but I've never seen him as, he was afraid that I would see him for all of his past mistakes, but I've never seen that when I'm speaking to him. I've just seen him as this massive possibility, this massive source of love that I get to walk alongside.
Oh, it's so beautiful the way that you guys are describing how you see each other, which I think is so key. And I love how you mentioned divine love. Really, in Western society, we have kind of a different perception of what real love is, but love is just giving, seeking nothing in return, right? Like that's really what love is, right? And the idea is that in those moments, you guys were doing just that, right? Doesn't have to give name to it, but you knew that that's what was necessary. And when we understand each other as divine beings that we are, it really allows us to do away with some of those perceptions or some of those misconceptions of what society tells us in terms of what we should accept, how we define our worth, how we actualize our worth in these relationships. So much of that is key to what you guys just shared there. And for me, I think there's a pivotal moment in couples' lives when you become parents. And I wanted to ask you that. You mentioned your son, and honestly, that takes on a toll in and of itself, because I think parenthood for many couples is a game changer where you really get to see kind of so much more in your partner. How did parenthood maybe manifest in you guys' relationship?
Well, so when I was 19, I became pregnant with Sam and then married his mom. Although we were skilled at procreating, we were teens and really didn't have a context for what it meant to be married. And so we didn't stay married long. We've done a wonderful job co-parenting over these 20 years. And fortunately, Sam has a little sister who from another relationship that his mom had, and she's been able to be a part of our life too, Hope. And so I get to be bonus dad for Hope and Sam's dad. But like the beauty of that is my wife came along, and what can be really complicated in like this kind of stepmom role, right? And she should be the one to talk about that. But what I do want to say is that not only did my son just love her from jump, so much so that he had a crush on her and tried to push up on her once. He was six. But like, she's always been consistent and always been present. And there's conversations that he has with her that he won't even have with me. And Hope is unique in this moment too, because, Hope she started coming when she was like, what, three? And I mean, let's think about the practicality of it all, right? My ex-wife's daughter, not biologically connected to me, right? Like my wife's like, yeah, she should come over too and spend time at our house. Like that's not a dynamic that always shows up when you're talking about step parents and past relationships and like the complexity that can lie therein. And Hope's 14, right? And Hope consistently has been with us, every other weekend for the past 11 years, and we get to be bonus parents for her. And it's a joy that I wouldn't have been able to tap into fully if it wasn't for my wife's way of being. So I think being able to co-parent with Sam's mom, who has been a special gift on that journey, but to do it while being married to the most amazing woman of the world has brought so much substance and value to my life as dad, and I imagine to their lives as well.
Well, that says a lot, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this is exactly why I wanted to do this show, because if we don't share exactly what you guys were able to do in those moments, and particularly you, Kimberly, because I think sometimes people don't realize what is holding them back is their own insecurity, right? When it comes to past relationships, the interactions, all of that. But the idea that maybe the stage was set, maybe because there was some camaraderie between you and Sam's mother as well. But for you to be able to say, no, this is important. How was that for you? As you know, this, you're an addition to his life and it comes with this. How was that for you?
I'm thinking of Phantom. We on one of our very first, the date that he didn't pay for. I think they were having a challenging conversation, and he started to talk to me about the challenging conversation, and then I said, well, let's stop, let's pray. And so I think that has been a foundation of we are even before we're even really in a relationship, we are a collective, and we have an opportunity to lift all challenges up and realize where there's space for healing. And so I'm grateful to just be on the journey and realize that that I have a place, I have a role, and to grapple with that role and have him to figure out how to grapple with that role together.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about, because no couple, no relationship is, without its own set of challenges, right? And you're talking about that vulnerability, being able to share with her past. You're talking about, okay, there was a challenge here, but you had a foundation, a spiritual foundation, which really allows for you guys to have alignment in those moments. I talk about this often in community, where there's an imbalance there because you're just basing things off of your own understanding. And ultimately, that's where the gaps are. Really, when you think about it, you need something that is a higher power, a higher calling, something beyond the two of you that allows you to have some real clarity in those moments. How else has your spiritual grounding and foundation really shown up? Because I mean, I can only imagine that for every time it's like, okay, wait a minute, we need to level set here. We need to get back in tune with that divine piece of ourselves. How has that really manifested for you guys?
I know that look. I think that we just stayed in tune, Trey, right? And our faith has been the constant cadence of our journey together. And so when she said we haven't really argued, legit, I can name the arguments that we've had. The wicker basket argument outside of Fred Meyer, right? Right. There was the Target argument,
okay, we don't have to go
right? But I mean, we've been married, we're going to year number 11 now, right? And I can actually name each one of the arguments. And there's probably 5 or 6 of them. And there was the eggnog argument. Okay, we're not. There's probably 5 or 6 of them. And it's not that we don't have conflict, and it's not that we don't disagree, and it's not that we don't find ourselves on opposing sides or having opinions that differ from each other. It's just that we understand that that's part of this journey. And instead of it disrupting the rhythm of it all sits in that same cadence of our faith that allows us to continue to move through. I just think the rhythm of our lives are in sync in that way, that it never has disrupted the beat, right? And it's beautiful for me, because I came from a home where there was a ton of domestic violence and yelling and shouting, and I dealt with my fair share of anger management issues when I was a child. And after experiencing all of that trauma, to live in this type of tranquility is transcendent, which is why I'm always attributing her to the divine, because the type of peace that she brings into every space that she's in, and I know you're experiencing it right now. Like me without her, I'm like at a 10, right? And like my level of energy is like something else. But like just sitting next to her, right? I'm like soothed in a way that I don't experience it otherwise, because she just is that peace. She is that comfort. She is my safe space. And yeah.
I have a couple thoughts associated with that. But I'll hit on safe space first. Early on in our relationship, we heard someone talk about being each other's corner, in that if you're in a boxing match, you can retreat to your corner and get cleaned up before you go out and face the world. And so I always want to be that corner. I think that he, as someone who is regularly speaking, is often heard, sometimes understood, but not always seen. And so when we're at home, I want to make sure that he can have a safe space and have a corner so that he knows that he is fully seen. He doesn't have to perform or do anything to be enough. I also think that in talking about trauma, even though trauma and childhood challenges, we're all coming to relationships with our own understanding of what works in a relationship and what doesn't, just based on what we've seen. And I think, if anything, in the beginning of our marriage, the parts that were rough spots, were figuring out what it means to seeing him as who he is, and not and understanding myself as a unique individual, and not trying to put cookie cutter solutions on what I might have seen my parents do, or what I might have seen relatives do, and realize, no, it's just the two of us coming to this. And so how we argue, how we manage each other's emotions is based on what we're creating right now, and not based on solutions that we think won't work or will work with the two of us.
Yeah, that's so key. That is so key, because we talk about, the ideas of our peer circles, right? We have these circles of influence, right? As they say in academia, you have your circle of influence. And so much of it is they try to make sure that you understand that you're carrying certain things forward. We talk about generational traumas. We definitely talk about that in Black community, right? Where, every day when I'm amongst this wall and I think about all of the beauty here, right? I think about the fact that it also comes from things that were painful, right? And so much of it we're still dealing with to this day when we talk about Black liberation and equity work and all of this. And it's important that we actualize exactly what you just said, which is we have the opportunity right now to change that and to figure out how we're going to deal with something, which I think is so key in any relationship. And, I was told before, through my own sessions of, you got to really assess your relationship assets and your relationship liabilities, right? So that you can bring your assets forward and you can leave your liabilities behind. Because sometimes we identify ourselves with the choices of our past, and we don't understand that we have the ability to reprogram ourselves, our reactions to things, our emotional responses. So I love how you called her your peace, because for me, I'm like, well, I need to be peaceful in the midst of all challenges in my life and all opportunities. That helps me level up spiritually. So I'm always that's like a mantra for me, like peace is my nature. I'm one with all, right? And ultimately having a partner, a life partner, and a spiritual mate who really understands that is so key to everything. So again, you guys are really showcasing your foundation here. And I'm telling you, it's a beautiful thing to hear, because like I said to you in the beginning, first off, I didn't even say this, but I love the gray and black. I mean, you guys, you guys came through. Sean, you knew what to do. You knew what to do it right.
I understood the assignment.
Yeah, I got your SP followed.
Well, I love it, but it also is that connectivity, I think, which is so important, and being able to have your unique nature but that it connects to each other in that unique way. As we think about this progression of your love, I mean, I want you guys to be able to talk about, you know, some of the highest moments for you. I mean, going through the photos that were sent, just beautiful, because I'm like, man, you guys shared a lot of moments. You guys were doing this, doing that. Tell me about one of the times where you were just like, this is the funnest thing we've ever done. I mean, because sometimes it's a trip, sometimes it's a staycation. I just want to hear from you, Kimberly. Like, what is one of those moments for you when you think back on what you've been able to experience with your husband? You know, something that is just like at the top echelon for you.
Well, I would say that he is, everything is yes with him, and I'm but everything is but. So together we were yes but now we are yes and so when I think of trips, like one of the trips I think of, or one moments, was we were hiking a glacier in Alaska, and I had wanted to go to Alaska for a long time, and we hiked the glacier, we went through the glacier, and I for me, I'd be thinking like, oh, this is too expensive. There'd be 5 million reasons in the world not to do a trip like that, because I'm always going through the buts. But with him, it's just a matter of time. And so I'm grateful that that's one of the moments, but it's one of many moments that he makes possible simply by just you know, I just need to follow his yes.
And tell me, Sean, as you stare lovingly at your wife, I love it. What are some of those moments for you? I mean, as you're continuing with the yeses, clearly you're creating the pathway to make things happen. But what are one of those moments for you?
Trey, I think for me, it's so difficult for moments. You know how much I struggle with that. What I'd like to say is this: is prior to meeting my wife and journeying with her, I didn't remember. I spent the majority of my life forgetting on purpose. I have very few memories that precede my wife, like from adolescence, right, to like my 20s. I have sparing things that I can pick and choose from. But because of the trauma I've had the fortune to survive, I got into the habit of forgetting on purpose and just like, oh, I don't need to remember, because it wasn't safe to remember. And so the greatest gift that my wife has given me amongst the many is the ability to remember again. And so I hold so much more now than what I ever have throughout my entire life, because we've been able to go through it together, and I have felt safe enough to remember. And so I want to offer that as an answer to your question, because absent of what it is that we've been able to share together, I wouldn't have held anything. But with her, I have the safety to hold it all.
Not related, but that did make me think of another moment. This is right before we got married, or I think it's before we got engaged, actually. We were dancing at,
Talking about the Argosy cruise?
No,
the dinner cruise?
No, I wasn't going through our fights. Okay. We were at Century Ballroom, and we were taking a tango lesson. I love to dance. He does not. We were taking a tango lesson, and it was, I don't know, half hour maybe. And then everybody who's like expert tango dancers comes in and takes over the floor. And so, you know, he was semi-confident as we were learning. But with tango, he's leading, but he's also leading backwards. And now that the floor is inundated with all these experts, I want to dance and pick up the lessons that we had, or try the lessons we had just learned. And he is getting super frustrated, like really frustrated. And I just look at his eyes and say, this is my partner, like not just my dance partner. Like I know that this is my partner, and I'm grateful to be able to look into his frustrated eyes and stand with him still while everybody dances around us, and still enjoy it. So it's the big moments on top of glaciers, but it's also standing still in a crowded dance floor and realizing that I got him by my side.
Well, you know what? Before I go to the next break, my last thing here is, you know, you guys are married, and I really want to hear about that special day, because when we talk about couples, I mean, the epitome is marriage. I mean, I don't know that it gets much better. I mean, you have certain people who are like, look, my domestic partner for life, I'm cool with that. But there's something so special about that day when you're able to profess your love so publicly with friends and family, and everyone is there to celebrate you. And so before we go to break, I just want to hear a little bit about that special day. I'll start with you, Kimberly. I mean, give me your recount.
My recount. Well, I mean, when we wrote our own vows, but then when the vows are actually, or the, what do you call it? Whatever. As soon as, when you're supposed to say your I do's, the pastor had shared what I was supposed to agree to. And I just had like the most enthusiastic I do. And I just feel like he is one of the easiest choices I make every day. And the enthusiasm that I had on that day, I'm grateful that nearly 11 years later, I still have the same enthusiasm to say I do.
There we go.
The first thing that comes to mind is Lamont Stiles, who was my barber at that time. I'm looking at the camera because I know Lamont was on here, and I know he watches Converge. But Lamont was supposed to cut my hair that morning on my wedding day, and he stood me up.
Oh no!
And that was how my wedding day started. But I tell you, if anybody that was, and I'm not just saying this because it was our wedding, right? But anybody that was at our wedding will tell you it was probably the most epic party that they've ever been a part of for a wedding reception. It's true. And I think what people experienced was just how authentic and transformative our love is. And like, we just love the mess out of that place, from our connection with Sisters Against Lupus and the bracelets that we wore that says, you know, that love wins, right? And even from our vows that we wrote. But then we had our the folks who were accompanying us, our best man and bridesmaids, to write their own commitments and their own reflections to our marriage. And they wrote those. You know, my friend Richard walked up the wrong way, and then like did like a loop to get to the place where he was supposed to be at, because that's just how Richard is, right? But there were so many of these organic moments of the day that just like felt like us, and the whole day felt like us. And then, bless her heart, when we woke up the next morning, she watched the Seahawks game with me. And that was the only Seahawks game she's watched with me since.
That's not true. Okay.
You guys, I love this. This has been so phenomenal to hear so much more about you guys' story. And after this break, we get to dive in a little bit and let you guys profess your love for one another right here on Black Love When We Met. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Short temper, so you know I'm kinda ruthless. Bad pass, roll one, time to elevate. Yeah, part-time smoker when I medicate. Big step, a couple hoes up in the Dino. Fly 'em out to Vegas, couple just in the casino. Mean rep, I had to earn it, others buy it, money burning. I work harder, I deserve it. You a groupie, you a bird. I'm a
Welcome back, everybody, to Black Love When We Met. I'm your host, Trey Holiday, and this has just been phenomenal. A phenomenal first episode with the goods. We got Kimberly and Sean in the building. You guys, just so inspiring. I'm all warm and fuzzy over here. I really am. And the warm and fuzzies are going to continue because I just want to give a moment for you guys to be able to express your love for each other before we end this show. I'll start with you, Kimberly.
Husband, you are the answered prayer that I did not have the courage to pray. And I'm so grateful that you are regularly my answer to life's biggest questions. You challenge me in ways that I would never imagine. You always give me the last piece of, no matter what we're eating, you always give me the last piece. You save the best for last. You always give me your best. And I'm so grateful that our home is a place that I'm glad to come to every day. Thank you for being my home.
Sean.
Don't make me cry.
I love you too.
My goodness. Y'all have warmed my heart so much, and I'm sure you have warmed the audience. Lastly, how does it feel for you guys to be doing this with me tonight and to really know that your love is inspiring so many out there?
I'm grateful to do all things with him. So thank you for pulling me out and making me share. Because I do feel like it is a gift to be with him, and it's a gift I'm grateful to be able to give to other people.
Sean.
I want the world to know how amazing my wife is. And so I say it all the time, but I'm really grateful that people get to experience what it is that I profess. So they know that it's not just words, like she is so much better than any word that I could offer. And I'm grateful for the space that you create, Trey. I mean, like all the things that I get to do in life, there is no greater call than being a husband and a father. And I take those two calls very seriously. And I'm grateful to be able to share space with my wife here tonight and be able to invite other people into our love.
My heart is full, so full. I cannot thank you guys enough for being courageous to share the ups, the downs, the more ups and ups, these triumphs, the silence, the moments of love. Thank you guys so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys, I am over here so full of joy right now. They have just poured into all of us. And I really hope that you guys are feeling it out there. The goal of this show is to really showcase and spotlight the beauty and resilience of Black love. And they have totally done that tonight and set us up for success for the rest of the week. They set the bar high, but their love is real. And it was totally felt right here in the studio. And I know it permeated through that screen for all of you out there tonight. Tomorrow night, joining me, we have Dynika and Blaze. You guys have been seeing their commercial throughout the show. They're going to be sharing their love with us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Thank you guys so much for watching Black Love When We Met. Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.